Taurus, welcome in. Get comfortable with me for a moment, wherever you are, whatever kind of day you've been having. Just loosen your shoulders a little bit and take a slow breath in and let it go. You don't have to carry everything while you're here. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Okay, Taurus, the first card coming out is the Tower. And, I immediately feel like this is touching something you've already lived through, or something you're finally reaching the other side of. This doesn't feel like a small inconvenience. The Tower feels connected to a moment when something you counted on suddenly didn't feel secure anymore. Maybe a situation changed without warning. Maybe somebody revealed a side of themselves you weren't prepared to see. For some of you, this could have involved work, money, a relationship, family, your home, or simply the direction you thought your life was taking. Whatever it was, Taurus, I keep sensing that it disturbed your sense of stability more than you probably allowed other people to see. And that matters, because you're someone who may tolerate a lot before admitting, yeah, this is really affecting me. You might keep going. You handle what needs to be handled. You show up. You figure things out. But behind closed doors, I feel like there were moments when you wondered how much longer you could keep holding everything together. Oh my God, strength just came out. That feels so appropriate here, because I don't see somebody who escaped this without scars. I see somebody who had to become stronger because there wasn't really another option. There may have been sacrifices people know nothing about. Nights when your mind wouldn't settle. Decisions you had to make while emotionally exhausted. Things you gave up because survival, stability, or peace became more important. But Taurus, look at where you are. Temperance is coming through, and the energy changes immediately. It feels quieter. Your nervous system may finally be beginning to understand that it doesn't have to stay in emergency mode forever. Things that once felt chaotic may slowly be finding their place again. You may be sleeping differently, thinking more clearly, managing your money differently, changing your routines, or simply realizing that the thing you thought would destroy your life didn't. It changed you, perhaps, but it didn't finish you. The Hierophant is here too, and I feel like you've become much more grounded in what you believe, what you value, and what you will no longer compromise. There's something about this experience that may have stripped away a lot of noise. You know yourself differently because of it. You may not need everybody to understand the choices you're making anymore. Yeah. And here comes the Six of Swords. Taurus, I really love seeing this after the Tower because it feels like distance. Not necessarily physical distance, although for some of you it could be. It feels more like emotional distance from the version of your life where everything felt uncertain. You're moving away from that chapter little by little, and if you're listening to this thinking, but I'm not completely out of it yet, that's okay. I'm not saying everything magically disappears tomorrow. I'm saying the cards feel like you're much closer to calmer ground than you realize. There's something beautiful about surviving quietly. Sometimes nobody applauds the nights you didn't give up. Nobody sees how many times you had to gather yourself and try again. But you know. And Taurus, I feel like someone else may soon know too. Because as I'm looking beyond the Six of Swords, there's this strange feeling that what you went through isn't going to remain completely private. Somehow, your story may find its way into a conversation, and the person listening may hear something in it that you never expected them to hear. There's judgment coming through, Taurus, and this feels like one of those conversations that begins almost casually, but ends up going somewhere much deeper. You may not sit down intending to tell somebody everything. It could start with one question, one memory, maybe somebody asking you how you handled a certain situation. And before you know it, you're talking about something you rarely explain in detail. What catches my attention is the way this person listens. They're not waiting for their turn to speak. They're not half listening while thinking about something else. I keep sensing this silence around them, almost like they're absorbing every word because something you're saying is touching a situation in their own life. The Hermit is here, and, yeah. This person may be going through something privately. You might not even know the full extent of it. They could be facing a decision, questioning somebody they trusted, wondering whether they should stay in a situation or finally walk away from it. There's something they haven't completely figured out yet, and your story may give them a perspective they couldn't reach on their own, not because you're trying to advise them. That's important. I don't feel like you're sitting there saying, "You need to do this, you need to do that." It feels much more natural. You're simply telling the truth about what happened to you, including the uncomfortable parts. The Queen of Swords comes out, and I feel like you're going to be very honest. Maybe more honest than this person expects. You may talk about something you ignored because you wanted to believe it would get better. You may admit there were warning signs you didn't recognize immediately. Perhaps you'll talk about the moment you realized you had to choose yourself, even though making that choice hurt. There's no need to make yourself look perfect in this conversation, and that's exactly why it has an impact. Oh my God, Taurus. Page of Swords. This person is really paying attention. I can almost see them asking little questions. What happened after that? How did you know? What made you finally decide? They may remember details you don't even realize you mentioned. Something about your experience could help them notice a pattern in their own situation. Maybe they've been doubting their instincts. Maybe someone has been confusing them. Maybe they're standing near the beginning of a road you already traveled far enough to recognize. And I want to be careful here because you're not responsible for saving anybody. I don't feel like the cards are placing that burden on you. It feels simpler than that. You lived something. You learned from it. And perhaps your willingness to speak honestly gives another person the chance to see something before they have to learn it the hardest possible way. Okay, Six of Wands. There's such an interesting feeling with this card because I don't think this person walks away from the conversation feeling sorry for you. Quite the opposite. They may look at you with a level of respect you weren't expecting. They see how far you've come. They may even say something like, "I had no idea you went through all of that." And Taurus, maybe that sentence hits differently because people often see the version of you that has everything under control. They see the steady one, the dependable one, the person who somehow keeps moving. They don't always see what it cost you to become that person. Judgment keeps pulling my attention back, though, because I feel like this conversation creates a realization on both sides. This person learns something from you, yes, but you may also suddenly understand that your difficult experiences weren't meaningless chapters you simply had to survive. Some of them gave you discernment. Some gave you a voice. Some taught you exactly what you never want to tolerate again. And, yeah, that last part feels important, because I'm looking at the cards coming up around your energy, Taurus, and I get the feeling you've become much more selective about what you allow into your mind, your space, and your peace. Something has changed about what gets access to you. The King of Swords is sitting here very firmly, Taurus, and I feel a different kind of strength around you. This isn't about fighting anybody or proving that you're right. It feels quieter than that. You may simply be reaching a place where you don't feel obligated to participate in everything that asks for your attention. Maybe there are conversations you no longer answer immediately. Maybe somebody calls with the same drama they've brought to you 10 times before, and instead of absorbing it for the rest of the evening, you let it remain theirs. Perhaps you've stopped checking certain things online because you noticed how different your mood became afterward. You may even be spending less time around people who leave you feeling strangely exhausted. The Four of Swords comes down beside the King of Swords, and, yeah, I feel like your relationship with silence has changed. There may have been a time when silence made you uncomfortable. You needed answers. You wanted to know what somebody was thinking, why something happened, what was coming next. But lately, Taurus, You may be discovering that not every unanswered question deserves another hour of your life. Sometimes you put the phone down. Sometimes you turn everything off. Sometimes you let the room become quiet. And somehow you can hear yourself again. The High Priestess just came through, and this feels very private. You may not be announcing these changes to anyone. There's no dramatic speech about boundaries, no long explanation about why you're distancing yourself. You just know what doesn't feel right anymore. Perhaps somebody sends you a message, and something in your body immediately tightens. Maybe you hear a certain kind of conversation beginning and think, I don't want to carry this today. You may notice yourself trusting those little internal reactions more than you used to. And Taurus, I don't feel like you've become cold. I feel like you've become careful. There's a difference. Oh my God. 8 of Cups. For some of you, this goes beyond turning off the news or stepping away from negative conversations. There could be something you've been emotionally attached to that you're beginning to outgrow. Maybe it's a friendship built around an older version of you. Maybe it's someone who only seems to appear when they need something. It could even be a habit of checking on a person, situation, or outcome that keeps reopening an emotional door you're trying to close. The 8 of Cups feels almost uneventful here, and I mean that in the best possible way. You may not leave with anger, you may not need closure from everybody, you simply stop returning. Okay, Temperance, this is what you've been trying to create. A life that doesn't constantly require recovery. Think about that for a second, Taurus. A life where every good morning isn't followed by somebody else's emergency. A relationship where you don't spend 3 days emotionally recovering from one conversation. A home that actually feels peaceful. A mind that isn't being fed fear, conflict, comparison, and noise from the moment you wake up. You may still care deeply. You may still show up for people. That beautiful Taurus loyalty isn't disappearing, but perhaps you're finally realizing that loyalty without boundaries can become exhaustion, and there's something very mature about the way you're handling this. You don't have to convince anyone that your peace matters. You don't need permission to protect it. I keep hearing this almost like an inner sentence. It took me too long to get back here. Yeah, that feels important, because once you've experienced real chaos, ordinary peace starts feeling incredibly valuable. And Taurus, there's something interesting happening as this energy settles. When you stop filling every empty space with noise, you create room for something different to find you. I'm looking at what wants to come into that space. And, this feels surprisingly warm. It almost feels like someone is about to interrupt your routine in a way you weren't planning for at all. The Magician is coming through, Taurus, and there's something playful about this energy that I wasn't expecting. It feels like your usual rhythm gets interrupted by a person, an invitation, or a simple moment that suddenly makes the day feel different. You may have absolutely no intention of meeting anybody, flirting with anybody, or changing your plans. You're just living your life, doing what you normally do, and somehow this person enters the picture. For those of you already in a relationship, this could be your partner surprising you with something spontaneous. Maybe they suggest getting out of town for a couple of days, trying a restaurant you've never been to, taking a drive somewhere, or doing something completely outside your normal routine. I can almost hear you asking, "Wait, when did you plan this?" And they may just smile. Page of Cups is coming out, and, oh my God, this feels sweet. There's a lightness here that you may have been missing. It doesn't have to be some huge romantic gesture. Sometimes it's simply being reminded that love can still surprise you. For my single Taurus, though, this gets interesting. The Page of Cups feels like an opening you weren't looking for. Maybe someone starts a conversation. Maybe you receive a message. Perhaps somebody invites you somewhere, and your first instinct is to hesitate because you weren't planning to put yourself out there. But something makes you curious enough to say yes. And here comes the Knight of Cups. Okay, somebody has an interest. I feel like this person may approach gently rather than coming in too aggressively. There could be a compliment, an invitation, a little extra attention. They may find reasons to keep the conversation going longer than necessary. The funny part, Taurus, is that you might think this attraction started right there. I'm not convinced it did. The magician keeps pulling me back because I feel like this person may already know who you are, not necessarily in some dramatic or mysterious way. They could have noticed you at work, through mutual friends, somewhere you regularly go, or even online. Perhaps they've seen you several times without you realizing they were paying attention. You're thinking, where did you come from? They may be thinking, finally, yeah, that's the feeling. Two of Cups just came out. There could be a surprisingly easy connection here. You know those conversations where you suddenly realize an hour has passed? It feels like that. You might discover similar humor, shared interests, or just an ease that makes you lower your guard a little. And Taurus, I want to emphasize a little. You don't have to decide where this is going. You don't have to turn one enjoyable evening into a 5-year plan. You're allowed to simply enjoy somebody. Ace of Cups is sitting underneath all of this, and the emotional energy feels fresh. For some of you, this may open the possibility of something romantic. For others, especially those already partnered, it could feel like rediscovering a softer side of the connection you already have. There's laughter around this, movement, something different from your normal schedule. And I think that's part of why it catches you off guard. You've spent so much energy creating stability that you may have forgotten stability doesn't have to mean predictability every single day. Sometimes, something unexpected can enter your life without destroying your peace. Sometimes, it can add to it. But Taurus, as beautiful as this feels, there's another energy underneath the spread that keeps demanding my attention. It doesn't feel romantic. It feels older. Something you've been waiting on. Something that has tested your patience again and again, appears to be moving toward another important moment. And with justice showing itself here, I wouldn't ignore what's coming up around this. Justice is sitting right in the center of this spread, Taurus, and the feeling I get is very specific. This looks like something you have been trying to resolve for much longer than you originally expected. It may involve money, your career, a contract, school, something official, or simply a situation where you've been saying, I just want what is fair. I just want what I'm owed. And every time you thought you were almost there, something seemed to push the finish line farther away. Maybe there was another meeting, another document, another conversation, another delay, another person saying, we'll get back to you. You may have walked into certain moments believing, okay, this has to be the end of it, only to discover there was still one more step. 7 of Swords. This is where I feel some frustration coming back into the reading. There may have been information withheld from you, somebody avoiding responsibility, changing their story, or perhaps trying to gain an advantage because they assumed you would eventually become too tired to keep pushing. 5 of Swords beside it makes me feel like there were moments when you questioned whether continuing was even worth the emotional cost. You may have thought about walking away just to have your peace back, but something inside you kept saying, no, this matters, not because you wanted revenge, not because you needed to defeat somebody, you simply knew something wasn't right. Okay, look at this, Knight of Pentacles. That is such Taurus energy, slow, persistent, one foot in front of the other. You may have gotten discouraged, stepped away for a moment, gathered yourself, and returned. You kept records, you kept showing up. You kept asking questions, you kept doing what needed to be done even when there was no immediate reward for doing it. And that patience may be exactly what changes the outcome. Oh my God, 6 of Wands. Taurus, I want to stay grounded here, because tarot cannot promise a specific legal, financial, or professional result. But energetically, this feels like recognition after a very long period of feeling overlooked or delayed. There may be a meeting, decision, response, approval, or conversation that finally feels different from the others. You could hear something that makes you sit back and think, wait, are we actually done? And maybe you don't even celebrate immediately. Maybe you've been disappointed so many times that you need a second to believe you can finally stop fighting. Justice is still staring at me. Something may come to light. Somebody may finally acknowledge what happened. A decision could move more fairly than it has before. For some of you, this may involve receiving money or something tangible that was delayed. For others, it could be recognition, an opportunity, an academic or professional outcome, or simply confirmation that you were right to keep advocating for yourself. And here comes the Ace of Pentacles. Yeah, this is where the reading feels like it exhales. Because whatever form this takes for you, there's a sense of being able to put your energy somewhere new. Instead of spending all your strength trying to correct an old situation, you may finally have space to build something. A new financial chapter, a new professional direction, a new sense of security. Maybe simply the ability to wake up without this unfinished business sitting in the back of your mind. Taurus, if you are close to giving up on something that genuinely matters to you, perhaps this reading is simply asking you to take one more careful look before you decide you're done. Follow the facts. Protect yourself. Get the right professional guidance where necessary. And don't let exhaustion make a decision that your clearer mind might make differently. You've already learned that strength doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes strength is getting up and trying one more time. Sometimes victory is simply reaching the end of something that tested you for far too long. So take another breath with me, Taurus. You don't need to force the ending. You don't need to know exactly how everything will unfold. Just remember how far you've already come. Taurus, don't quit now. You're closer than you think. After everything you've endured, this victory has your name on it.